do we'll do a review in Mamer Veavrohom Zoken Aleph. This is the 42nd Mamer. The Mamer is Veavrohom Zoken Boba Yomim V'Hashem Berech Avrom Bakoil. The Rebbe said this Mamer on Shabbos Chayei Sara, which was מבהח Keslו, in the year Tavshin Lamed Zayin. Later on, it says in the note, they published it on Chof Mar Cheshvan Tavshin Nun. The Rebbe refers to it for the Yom HaBohir Chof Mar Cheshvan Habo Leinu L'Toiva, the very special clear day. What happened on Chof Mar Cheshvan that we call it Yom HaBohir? That was the day that when they appealed the verdict of the books of the Svarim. That appeal of the opponents was negated. They didn't accept it. So Chof Mar Cheshvan turned into becoming a Yom HaBohir. And that's why the Rebbe refers to it as Yom HaBohir. I believe that was in Tavshin Memches. In that year, when they published it, it's also the date in which they started learning the Rambam in the 7th cycle. They did already 6 cycles, and they started the 7th cycle. And the date when they published it, Shabbos Chayei Chof Mar Cheshvan Shnas Hei Tavshin Nun. And this was those who learned 3 prokim a day. It was their 7th, and those were learned 1 perek. This was the beginning of the 3rd cycle, and also Sefer HaMitzvahs. So it's a very special day. That one was published for the Chof Hei Cheshvan. We'll learn the Mamer inside. Shabbos Chayei Shabbos Chayei Sara, מבהח כסלו, ה'תשלז Lamed Zayin. So the pasuk says in the parsha that Veavrohom Zoken Boba Yomim, and we'll see that Rebbe will teach all these different expressions about Avram. First, it says he was a Zokin, and then it says it was Boba Yomim. Zokin, as the Rebbe will teach, is the avodah of Torah. Boba Yomim is the avodah of mitzvahs. So, after Avram Zokin Boba Yomim, Hashem Beirech es Avraham Bakoil. Hashem blesses Avram with everything. What exactly does it mean, Bakoil? What is this everything? And in the Maimon, the Rebbe is going to explain the various different madregas, and we'll see that Bakoil, as the Rebbe brings down from the Zohar, is a very high madrega. After Avram did the avodah of Zokin and Boba Yomim, so he became an Asar Shalim, became a wholesome place for the blessings to rest. So then the Eibishter blesses him Bakoil. The Rebbe will explain that Bakoil is Primis HaKeser, is Atik, and higher even because in Bakoil itself there's various madregas, as the Rebbe will explain in the Maimon. But first of all, the questions that the Rebbe asks here from the Rebbe Rashab in the Maimon. So the Rebbe Rashab in a Maimon that opens up with the same Veavrohom Zoken, Dishnas Tofreish Samach Vov, in the year Tofreish Samach Vov, and this is the Hemshech of Tofreish Samach Vov, Omed Ayin Ches. So he asked the question over there, Ma she'omer Bakoil Stam. He just says he blessed him with everything, but he doesn't articulate what he blessed him. He says everything, but what does this everything mean? And he brings down that Bakoil, everything, is the Zohar, meaning the source of all the brachas. That means there are specific brachas that are revealed brachas, and then there is the source of brachas which is hidden. That's the Behelim. That's the Bakoil that doesn't have yet any specificity. We don't say anything specific because it's a level where there is no specifics there. And the point of the explanation that the Rebbe Rashab gives is the koil hu bechinas helem ha'atzmi. Bakoil is a level of obscurity of the essence, meaning It's a place where the essence is, and there's no revealed, there's no koiches there. There's only essence. The essence is obscure, and that's why it's bakoil everything, but it's not, which means that he merited to receive from such a high level from the helam atzmi of godliness. That level came down to Avram, and that's the level shemishom nimshochim kol hagiluim. From there, all the revealed levels that hamshachas and the blessings, everything that comes is from there. But in that place, it's still bakoil, it's everything, because that's the source. Everything comes from there, but it's not yet over there. It's b'chinas elam. And this is based on the Zohar, K'di'isu b'Zohar, as we find in the Zohar, Allah posik, v'Hashem beirech Avram bakoil. So the Zohar comments, Hashem blessed Avram with everything. The Avram is Borich, Avram was blessed, Ma'asar, from a place, the Chol Birchon Nafki Mitamon. All the blessing come from there. That was the place, the Bakoil, that he got blessed, the source of which all blessing comes from. That's the Helam Atzmi. There's not yet anything revealed. There's no specific blessing. It's Bakoil, it's everything, because it's the hidden, which is in the essence of godliness. And all the blessings come from there. Lochein Omer Bakoil Stam. That's why he says plain with everything. And he doesn't detail any specifics what the blessings were about. Because it's a level of limitless, which is higher than details, so there's no details there. So this is the meaning, according to the Zohar, the way that Rabbi Rashab explains the meaning from Bakoil. But then we have Rashi's pshat of Bakoil, that Bakoil is Begematria 52, which is Begematria Ben. And this Bakoil means a son. So what's the connection from blessing with everything with the Ben? So the Rebbe asks, we have to understand HaKesher v'Hashaychus, the Pirush HaZohar, the tie, the connection of the interpretation of the Zohar. Shebakoil hu asar dechol birchoi nafki mitamon. That Bakoil is the place that all blessings come from there. In Pirush Rashi, to reconcile it with Rashi's commentary al Aposik, Shebakoil koi al Yitzchok. Rashi says Hashem blessed him, but Bakoil with Yitzchok. Bakoil begematria ben. Bakoil is the same numerical value of 52, and that means the son, and that is Yitzchok. So how do we explain the blessing of, highest blessing of Asar Dechol Birchoin Nafki Mitamon, the place of Pnimis HaKesed, as the Rebbe will explain? How do we this connect it to the Ben Yitzchok? And the Rebbe will explain in the Mamer that the purpose of all of the Hamshachas is to bring it down the Mata. And to push down things Lamaton, you need Gevuris the Yitzchok. So Yitzchok is the person, Yitzchok's Ben, being a Ben, Bakoil, he was able to take that Birchoin that is from the highest level, from Helam Ha'atzmi, to push it down, as the Rebbe will explain the connection from Bakoil with Yitzchok and the source of the blessing. V'gam, a further question the Rebbe asks, the Mahemshech HaKsuvim Mashma, the flow of the verses, it appears, it seems, Shaposik Zev Avrom Zoken V'goymer, this posik, Avrom is old, is an introduction of Hakadomo Levayomer Avrom El Avdoi V'lokachta Isha Libni Yitzchok. That this introduces the whole story that Avram says to his servant to go out and find a wife for his son. The idea of marriage of Yitzchok. But tzorich lahovin. So again, we need to understand Mahi Hashayches the Havaya Beirech Avram Bakoil. Hashem blesses Avram Bakoil which means, according to the Zohar, we explained, Shenizborech Ma'asar Dechol Bircho and Nafki Mitamon, he was blessed from the place where all the blessings come from there. Lezeh Shesholach Es Abdi Lokachas Yishol Ibnoi, to this, that the continuation is that he sends his servant to take a wife for his son. So before we talk about what's the connection to the son, but here it's not just the son, it's the son and then later on the marriage. As the Rebbe will explain, the purpose of marriage is to bring down, perivirivia, to bring down into the world. This is part of the process of bringing down the bakoil through the ben and through his marriage to Rivka, as the Rebbe will explain. We also need to understand the great advantage and elevation in the Nesuya Yitzchok v'Rivka of the marriage of Yitzchok v'Rivka. Shehu na'le yoser gam b'chines bakoil. This is even higher than the level of bakoil. Bakoil is asar d'chol bircho nafki mitamon from the Zohar. Bakoil is the place of all blessings come from there. And this, Avram, that Yitzchak getting married with Rivka is even greater because, as explained, the Rebbe will explain, marriage brings down all the greatest blessings down because the purpose is dir b'tachtonim, not to remain in a level of bakoil. The reason that Yitzchak got the bakoil so that he can be mamshechit into the world through the Nesuye Yitzchak v'Rivka. So, but we see here that this marriage is only the follow-up, and this is the follow-up, and this is the result. It seems much greater than the bakoil because the fact that the Eibishter blesses Avram with everything. That's only an introduction to the marriage of Yitzchak with Rivka. So we say Hashem blessed her with everything. So that great level, that's only an introduction to the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, because all of these hamshachas is to come down and to make the Eibishter adir b'tachtonim. So it's all about the marriage, all about Yitzchak. It's all tied in, as the Rebbe will tie it in the Mamer. Base. So first, the Rebbe brings down a medrash. We'll understand it by introducing what we find in the medrash. The medrash says that the Eibishter does not elevate somebody to dominance, to a high level, until he checks him, inspects him, and he tests him. So before the Eibishter brought Avram to the level that he gave him bakoil, he gave him the highest level, says the Medrash, the Eibishter needed to test him. Same thing you find by our father Avram. First, Hashem tested him with 10 tests, and he was able to withstand them. Then he blessed him. So the reason he got the blessing of bakoil was because he was able to pass the test of the 10 nisyonis. What's the cheshbon of 10 tests? Explains that Tzemach Tzedek, Tzemach Tzedek, explained that Tzemach Tzedek, the Eser nisyonis hem keneged Eser Sfiris. The 10 tests correspond to the 10 Sfiris. Mash'enkin koil, but koil is higher than the 10 Sfiris. U'pnimis hakeser she'einu b'cheshbon Eser Sfiris. That is the inner level in keser, which is not calculated amongst the 10 Sfiris. In keser, we have pnimius hakeser, we have chitzenis hakeser. Sometimes the cheshbon of the Eser Sfiris, you count keser, chochma bina, you don't count das, and then you count the rest of the midos and malchus. So, in this context, the level of koil, which is pnimis hakeser, is not part of the 10 spheres, is not keser chochma bina, but it's the pnimius hakeser, which is a standalone on its own. The level of koil Hashem Beirich Avram Bakoil is the level of Pnimius HaKeser. That's the Asar, the whole Birchoin, Nafkim Mitamon, where all they come from. But it is not part of the 10, but it's above the 10. The Bebchina Zu, in this level, because it's higher than Ishtalshalus, Ein Isaruso de Latato Magas Lishon. It's not a place where the arousal from below, the service of man, cannot reach the level of Atik, cannot reach the level of Pnimis HaKesed. Because because that's not a place. That's something which you're given from above. You can't elicit, you can't arouse that, you can't bring that down. But after Avraham withstood the 10 tests, which correspond to the 10 spheres, in which it is Shaykh Sarusa de Latato, starting with Kitzonis HaKeser, Chochma Bina, he accomplished through the test to elicit and bring down Sarusa de Leila from his avoida of the Nisyonis. Asai Baruch Bakoil, then the Eibishter gave him Bakoil. He gave him Primus HaKeser at the higher level. So the Rebbe explains now a very interesting fine note if you look at the Pasuk. By benching him Bakoil, it says Hashem Beirechas Avram Bakoil. It doesn't say that Hashem blessed him that he should become a Zokin, he should become a Baba Yomim. Over there, that he attributes to Avram. Avram became old. Avram became Baba Yomim. The level of Zokin and the level of Baba Yomim, that came through his work. That was Zerusa de Latato. So the Rebbe points that, but when it comes to Bakoil, that's Hashem Beirach. That's a level which is not associated with his avodah of Avram. That's not associated with that. That is something Hashem Beirach Saram Bakoil. So the Rebbe explains it. This is the precise language of the verse. Avram Zoken Baba Yomim. And then it says, Vashem Beirachas Avram Bakoil. That Hashem blesses Avram Bakoil. The fact that he was a Zokin and he came in days, the Eibishter blessed him. This is a blessing of the Eibishter to be able to become old and Boba Yomim, everything of the Eibishter. But we're attributed to Yitzchak, Avram's Yisarusha Deltat. The Torah attributes it to Avram. Veavrohom Zoken Baba Yom. Avram is the one that became old, coming days. It was his doing. But when it says that he got koil, it doesn't say Avram Zoken Baba Yomim Uba koil. Over there it says Avram Hoyu like koil. Doesn't say Avram had everything. Ki Shavaya Baruch Bakoil. The Eibishter blessed him Bakoil. The Ashloim Arhabir was that we can say the explanation is the Zeshen is Baruch Bizikno Ubiyomim. The fact that he was blessed with Avram Zoken Ubaba Yomim with his who is Saruso de Leilo. That's an arousal from above. It comes from Hashem, the blessing of Hashem. But Shemis Oireres Vinim Sheches Al Yidei Saruso de Latato. It is aroused and it's waken up and it extends through this Ruslotat. That's Avram. So his Avram became Zokin. He became Baba Yom because he elicited, he earned, he brought down the level of Zokin and Baba Yom. But the fact that he was blessed by Koil, that's an arousal from above that comes from above. The arousal below doesn't reach that. You can't elicit that. So if we're going to say that it's not connected to the person, so why does it come after Zokin and Baba Yom? So Avram Bakoil, because it's just Eibishter decided to give it to him. Why Epis after Avram Zokin Baba Yom? For another reason, because we know the Eibishter rests only in a place which is wholesome. So in order to get Baba Yomim, it's not that he elicited it, but it needed to be wholesome. He needed to be Zokin and Baba Yomim, so then he could get the bracha Bakoil. The reason this bracha comes only after he would stand the 10 tests. Needs to be a whole place, not that he elicits it through the avodah of the nisyonis. The avodah of the 10 nisyonis make him a place which is wholesome. And in order to get the Eibishter on his own to be mamshiv, this Rusa de Leilo, needs an asar shlim to rest. But that's what here it says, Hashem Beirach v'Geber, it was Hashem, his blessing. Okay, so now, the way we explained now, is Zokin and Baba Yomim is Chitzonius HaKeser, which is the level of Arich, and the level of Bakoil, Asar, from everything, that's Primius HaKeser, that's Atik. The problem we have now that in some places it's explained that the Zokin and Baba Yomim is actually Atik. Atik Yomim. The Rebbe will break down. And the Rebbe will explain that sometimes Arich is also called Atik. Really, it's not Atik. Bakoil is Atik. But Avram Zokin, Baba Yomim is because in Arich shines the level of Atik, a certain amount of Atik that comes to Arich, but it's really Arich, it's really Seder Ishtalshus. Bakoil is higher than Seder Ishtalshus. Let's look inside. Vagam shegam zokim baba yomim hu bechinas atik yomin. The literal translation in Daniel, when it talks about Hashem, he talks of him, he saw the atik yomim, old of days. Basically, that's almost like bo bayomim. The Eibishter means from days by God. The Eibishter was always there. So he says that the Eibishter, when it says that he was Baba Yomim, meaning that Abraham got the garments of Baba Yomim, he got the garments of Atik Yomim from days by God. So it's actually the level of Atik already, Zokin Baba Yomim, not Chitzonius HaKeser like the Rebbe said. And the Rebbe brings down, we find it in the Medrash. Shomer HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaAvraham, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avraham, Boy ulevush levushi, come put on my garment. Which garment is the garment of Atik Yomim, Baba Yomim? Shenemar Veavrohom Zoken Baba Yomim, that Avram Zoken, he came Baba Yomim, that is the garment of Hashem. Upirus b'matnes kuna. So in the commentary of the Matnas Kuna explains, what does it mean, the garment of Hashem is Baba Yomim? Baba Yomim hu levusha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why is it the garment of Hashem? Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu nikra Atik Yomim. Because the Eibishter is called Atik Yomim. So what Avram got was Atik Yomim, got the Baba Yomim. And Tzemach Tzedek Moisif, Tzedek adds, this is Baba Yomim in Matnas Kuna. But also the Zoken, a beard, is also a garment of the Eibishter. Shegam Zoken, which is the level of Dikno, level of a beard, it's also a garment. Just like the Eibishter dresses up with Atik Yomim, Baba Yomim, the beard, Zoken, which is a beard, is also a garment of Hashem. Ki ba'atik Yomim siv, because with regards to Atik Yomim, that level of godliness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in that level of Atik Yomim siv, levushik etlag chiver, his garment is like white snow, is white as snow. Shehu Bechinas Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna. That snow white that is talking about is the 13 strands of the beard, which is also a lavush. So Avraham dressed up the Zokin, dressed up the Tikunei Dikna. Avraham dressed up with the Baba Yomim, as the Matnas Kuna says, the level of Atik Yomim. So how are we saying all of a sudden that Avraham Zoken Baba Yomim is the level of Chitzonius HaKeser, which is lower than the level of Bakoil, which is Pnimius HaKeser Yesh Loimar? So the Rebbe says we can say Shakavona B'Zehi, what it's meant over here that he's wearing the Atik Yomim. He loy la'atik mamish. We're not actually talking Atik itself. Pnimis hakeser. Elo la'arich shenikro gamke mishim Atik Yomim, but arich, which is also referred to, called with the name Atik Yomim. So sometimes the reference, even though specifically we divide Atik and arich, and chitzonis hakeser is arich and pnimis hakeser is Atik Yomim, but it can also be, Chitzonis HaKeser can also be called Atik. Why would Arich be called Atik? The Rebbe explains in the bracket. Because when Arich receives from Atik, it's called Atik, V'yesh Loimar. Dezeh she'arich nikra b'shem Atik Yomin, who, why is it called Atik Yomin? L'sheboid v'levboshim zayin tachtoin is the Atik, because in it is dressed up the 7 lower levels of Atik. In Atik, as we have there, also the Shiras and Alomis in the level in Atik, the 7 lower ones over there, there's not B'Yischalkus, but the 7 Tachtoinas dress up in Arich, and that's what it's called Atik. Mashenkin Kol, but then we say Bakoil, Atik Atzmi, that's Atik itself. So, in Atik itself, we also have the level, the Yisayim is Atik Gufo, who beginas Gimel Rishonis the Atik. In Atik, when we say Bakoil, that is the first 3, the Chochmah Bin Adas of, or the Kesef Chochmah Bin of Atik, She'einam Muluboshim Ba'arich, don't get dressed up in Arich. So that's also the level included in the Bakoil. The Ad, and we can even go further, the Bchinas Pnimius Atik till the level of Pnimius Atik. So you have Atik, you have Gimel Rishonis, the Atik, and you have now the inner of Atik, which is even higher than Gimel Rishonis. L'maisa is even higher. Okay, now see if Aleph, and as we said earlier, quoted in Sif Aleph Mamer Shekol Hu Bchinas Helem Ha'atzmi, that Koil is the essence, the obscured essence, which is higher even than Pnimius Atik. And Bezohu Sho'inyan the Zokim Baba Yomim Meyaches HaKodesh Baruch Hu L'Avraham. The Baba Yomim, it says Veavrohom Zoken Baba Yomim. Veavrohom Zoken Baba Yomim. Mashenkim Benegei Koil, when it comes to Koil, Omer Shavaya Beriches Avrom Bakoil, that it was Hashem gave him the Koil. Kizeh Shahoyo L'Avraham B'chinas Zoken Baba Yomim. Because this, that how did Avram get the Zoken Baba Yomim? Shu b'chitzonis HaKeser, the level of Zoken Baba Yomim, which is in Chitzonis HaKeser, Himshich Zalei the Avodah. That was through his Avodah. The Avodah of Avram brought him the Zoken and the Baba Yomim. And that's why the Torah attributes it to Avram. Yesh Loimar, the Rebbe says, the Zeu Gam HaShayches the HaPirush, this is also the connection with the interpretation. Zoken Baba Yomim U'levusha the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we brought down from the Matnas Kuna, the Tzemach Tzedek, that Zoken Baba Yomim, this is Hashem's Levushim, the Kitlag, Levusha Atik Yomim and Kitlag Chiver, which is the beard, is Levushim HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Yima Pirush, with the interpretation, Shezokin Uzeh Shekona Chochma. We say Zokin Adarta Pnei Zokin Sekona Chochma, we say, which is Torah. So when it says Avram Zoken, meaning Avram acquired Torah, and then it says Bo Bayomim Hu Levusha Mitzvahs. Days, every day we do a mitzvah gives you a garment. Torah is an inner, it's Chana Chochma, and Bo Bayomim is mitzvahs. So now, Kizeh Shahoyo LaAvram Levusha Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Himshich Zali Da Torah Mitzvah Shloida. The fact that he had the garments of the Eibishter, how did he get it? He worked at it. It was his Sarus L'Tato. He brought it down through the Torah and mitzvahs. Torah and mitzvahs gave him the level of the Zoken and the Baba Yomim, the Chochmah, through Torah and the mitzvahs. Specifically, the Rebbe explains, Avyesh Levayres Rebbe Protish, to explain this more in detail. The Zoken and Baba Yomim, Heim Shtei Madreges. These are the two levels. Zoken Shehu Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna, Zokin, which is the 13 strands of the beard, that's in the level of moicha, the brain, the hidden brain, which is above understanding, but it's in the level of arich, it's the level of moich, it's the level of zokin, the level of chokhmah. Ubaba yomim or arich atzme, but baba yomim is arich itself, not the level of moichas timo, but that's arich itself. The fact that arich is called atik yomin who be iker be atzmius arich. It's mainly in the essence of arich. So in a higher level than the three, than the moichas timo, but in the level of atzmius arich. So that's the level of baba yomim. Zokein is moichas timo the arich. And Baba Yomim is the essence of Arich, which is the area where Atik comes down into Arich, which is called Galgalta Arich. That's the skull of Arich. The Moyach is inside, that's the lower level, but the Galgalta, the skull, surrounds it. That's the level of the Arich itself, which is the level of Baba Yomim. And that's the connection of these two matters, Zokin u'Baba Yomim Shalomailo, the level of Zokin u'Baba Yomim above, and we said now Moichas Timo Torah and the level of Galgalta, which is Levushim, which is Mitzvah Shalomailo, Levusha Shal Kol HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have the two inyonim of Zokin u'Baba Yomim, which are the above, with the two inyonim b'avodas sod. Ki moichas timo da'arich u'pnimi. The moichas timo, that's the level of pnimi. Hashodesh is the Torah. That's the root of Torah, which is teroscha b'seich meyoi. It's inside. The galgalta da'arich and the skull of arich u'makif. That's surrounding. Hashodesh the mitzvahs. That's the mitzvahs, the levushim. Vayidei sekat Torah d'Avrom. So through Avrom's Torah, Zokin shekona chochma. That's he acquired chochma. That he got the level of what? Of Avram Zoken. Himshich bechinas hadikmno u'moichas timo da'arich Zoken. That he brought down the beard, the Zoken, the moichas timo da'arich, that came through the avodas haTorah. Aidei shoya Baba Yomim, through the Baba Yomim levusha mitzvahs, he wore the garment of the mitzvahs. Himshich bechinas galgalta da'arich. That he brought down the skull of arich. Baba Yomim, that was the Baba Yom, that's the mitzvahs. So these are all attributed to Avram, because Avram's Zoken and Baba Yomim, he got through his Torah and mitzvahs. That's why he mamshich it. Mashenkin kol shu b'chinas atik, but kol, which is level of atik, einis erusa tata magas l'shom. Over there, the work from below doesn't reach there. L'chein ksiv v'Hashem beirach es Avram bakol. That's why it says Hashem blessed him Bakoil. That level of Primis HaKesed, the level of Atik that God gave by Hashem. Yisarusa de Leila Abo Milumailo. The Yisarusa de Leila comes from above. Why does it come? after all the avodah of Ram Zoken and Baba Yomim, because you need to have a wholesome place for the bakoil to come down, for the level of atik to come down. Eloshesarusa de leila zu. This is a rusa de leila of bakoil of atik. Shoyrim is gala davke. It can only rest and revealed only lachar shleimus avodah, after the wholesome of avodah v'sarusa de leila shalidei sarusa de latata, and the arousal of above that comes through the arousal of above, below, which brought down the sarusa de latata of Avram Zoken and the Baba Yomim. Lachein masher beirach havav Avram bakoil. The fact that Hashem blessed Avram with everything, that was only after he would stand the 10 tests. Kenal Siv Beis B'Tchilose, we said earlier in Siv Beis B'Tchilose. So basically, he needed the Avram Zoken and the Baba Yomim that he accomplished by himself through his Sarusa de Latata, brought down the Sarusa de Leila through his Torah mitzvahs. And then, when it was in a level of completeness, Shleimus Haveda, then he can get the level of Bakoil, which Hashem gave it, which is the level of Atik, which comes as a gift of Hashem. And now the Rebbe is going to continue to explain that also in the level of Bakoil, in Pnimius HaKeser, which is the level of Atik, with also different levels, and to explain how we reach the different higher levels through the level of Nisyonis, through the level of Vedas, as the Rebbe will continue to explain.